We want a guy to join us. So
Yes.
here we go. Here we go. Larry Howard is here, right from Chicago.
Hi, Larry.
He is a sales professional, and just to give some personal views on your about sex and love, Larry. Thank you for joining Emily and Friends. Appreciate your stopping by and manning up for this.
We're gonna put all
Hey everybody, how you guys
the
doing?
whole male conversation is on you right now.
Right, that's right.
But don't feel any
Yes, don't
Say something
disappoint
good.
us. No pressure,
Okay.
Larry.
Well, let me first say this, okay? My perspective comes from one of a Christian perspective.
Okay.
Okay, so when we look at the institution of sex, my personal opinion about that is that sex and marriage are almost like a toothpaste and toothbrush. They weren't really meant to be separated. Okay, so when we look at that, I think that in and of itself has played a big role into what's been happening with sex and love and the two being confused. Now, my personal opinion about sex is that it is very much an emotional experience. And in some cases, a lot of people say that, women are wired differently, and I do agree with that. Women, we see that in society that women tend to be emotive, men tend to be a little bit more physical.
And cerebral.
Yes. But one thing I will say is that there is a spiritual transfer, in my opinion, that occurs when two people engage in that particular act. And I think that whenever that occurs with two individuals, from a male perspective, I do see that it does cause issues in terms of breaking it because of the fact that, let's say, two individuals are involved in that type of way. In my opinion, I feel like you are directly robbing that person's spouse when you do engage in that, and it's not something of a marriage foundation.
That's deep.
Okay, well,
And then, and like I said, my opinions are a bit more conservative.
right.
And
pertaining
it
to
sounds,
this.
but it's spiritually based. That's why.
And I'm going to go there with you, Larry, because even in Genesis, when God put Adam and Eve out of the garden, and He said that the man was going to work by the sweat of his brow, and the woman was going to bear children, pain and suffering, and He said her desire will be for her husband. So in some
Right.
ways, when you connect yourself to someone in that physical way, women do have that tendency. Your desire is for that man because
Yep.
you've been connected to him in that way.
Right. And then there's a soul tie that occurs when you do connect with someone in that type of manner. So I think that, a lot of people, they're out there looking for love, and because sex is couched in marriage, it's something that is meant to be within the marriage foundation, as well as love. A lot of times it's intertwined and it's confused. And of course, the God I serve is not a God of confusion. So in understanding the dynamics of how that occurs, people oftentimes confuse love with just sex, when in fact love is not what's necessarily motivating that sexual act, it's lust. See, but the reality is a luster and a lover could be doing the very same thing, but the motivation could be different.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So from a luster standpoint, what we talk about in terms of sex running out, the sex drive running out and all that other stuff happening, really what it is, it's the lust for that person that's running out.
Right.
Right,
And so go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that lust, that infatuation is a feeling, but love is more of a commitment. That has grown
And I
over
think
time.
that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Talia, that when you're really loving someone, you're growing in love.
Right.
So then I question then to you, Cosette, and to Larry, what do we tell people? I mean, to differentiate between sex and intimacy and sex and love.
Well, I'll
think-
start by
Go ahead, Cosette.
Well,
Let's go.
I'll start by saying that love is a choice, right? And part of the reason why the institution of marriage suffers is because we don't keep choosing someone, and we don't keep, growing in love. So you actually have to be very deliberate in relationship. You have to keep choosing that person. And if two people keep choosing each other, no matter what's going on physically, then they'll have a sustaining relationship.
And you were going to say what, Larry?
I was going to say that, love, I do agree love is a choice. But however, to really know love, I feel that you must know God first. If we look back on what King said, God is love, he who does not
right.
does not know love, does not know God. So we got to take that into consideration, but then also take into consideration, what does love propel us to do? From a biblical standpoint, the Bible says, "For God so loved the world that He gave
His
His only begotten Son."
But-
So love to some degree is a choice, but it's also you giving. And I think that with sex in contemporary society, it focuses more so on receiving, which means personal self-gratification and more so fulfilling my own sexual desires, which is not necessarily love.
Right.
So we have to be very clear about what love really is,
Seven-
and then articulate that in our communities, and then as women, just as it's something that Sylvia's heard this plenty of times. I will say that you have to be able to recognize the difference between when someone loves you and when they're just in it for themselves.
That's true.
Well, yeah.
That's true.
773-591-1690 is our number. I really want to get to this point because oftentimes, and I was talking to Talia about it off air as well, that oftentimes we love people how we think they should be loved as opposed to how they need to be loved.
All right.
And so when you start telling people, I need this, I need that, and your partner is, oh, that's nothing, or they dismiss it, that can be very hurtful.
That is so true. But one thing I will say, giving a shout out to Pastor John Hanna, he recently actually just preached a sermon on this, which is something that I've looked into myself. The 5 love languages. When you look at that book,
Everybody keeps talking about the 5 love languages.
And-
It's a great book, yeah.
And
I can
couples
say-
should read it together. Yeah.
I think it's a very good couples book. It's a very good book for just anybody, whether you're single or you're in a relationship. It's good to understand what your love language is, because the reality is, I was actually in a relationship where I can actually attest to the fact that we both spoke different love languages, and it was just as much as you both speaking 2 different complete languages in real life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is necessary for a relationship to work is communication.
Yeah.
So if you aren't able to effectively articulate your love for one other person, you may be thinking, okay, that this is the way that she should receive love because this is how I receive love. But it's not the same. And
that's what
that,
people do. You're right. You're right.
and understanding that dynamic is essential to being able to love that person so that they actually feel love. Because you could be doing the right things the wrong way.
Absolutely. So, Larry, I'm going to give you the last comment on this, if you will.
Well, basically, what we have to do, just like I said, is just return to where love comes from and where sex comes from. When we understand why it was created, it helps us understand where it should be instituted at. The reason why I believe that sex is meant for the marriage foundation, okay, and why a lot of people are having issues with it before pre-marriage and things like that, is because once it's instituted, it wasn't necessarily supposed to stop.
Gotcha.
It was something that is continuous because it drives us to be fruitful. The Bible says be fruitful. So it's one of those things that once implemented, it wasn't like we were just supposed to shut it off. So once we understand that, and then we understand that love, okay, is literally the marital union is a reflection of God, Jesus Christ, and his relationship with the church.
Gotcha.
And it's mirrored throughout the entire Bible. So if we understand Christ's love for the church and how that's supposed to be mirrored in our relationships with one another, of course, in the sexual act, certain feelings of love, emotion, all those things will be intertwined in that.
All right.
So you have to understand that will come into that place because of the fact that all these things are tied together.
And with
So-
that, Larry, gotta run. Really appreciate your being here, but we do have to run. I thank you so very
Definitely.
much for
Thank you
joining
for having
Emily and
me.
Friends today.